We are back on the road to City Hall. Earlier today, my first guest announced his plans to revamp the city's fiscal process, unveiling what he calls the People's Budget, which includes universal pre-K and tax relief for most New Yorkers. But the city's chief fiscal officer is being upstaged by a potential rival, former Congressman Anthony Weiner, who in an interview released today says that he is thinking about joining the race for mayor. Here to talk about that and more is City Controller and candidate for mayor, Errol Louis. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Always good to be on.
Let's start with your speech to ABNY today, Association for a Better New York, a big business group. And you unveiled a totally different way of thinking about the budget. You're saying we should get away from the budget dance, which looks at a very, very small sliver of the budget every year, and look at the controllable expenses, which is closer to $32 billion.
$32 billion. Yeah, I mean, look, every year we have the same dance over and over again. It's like deja vu. The mayor says that we don't have enough money, so he threatens the closures of library services, youth programs, the closures of fire companies, and then the council members protest and denounce the budget cuts. Then we have advocates camp outside City Hall protesting and having letter-writing campaigns. And then, lo and behold, a few months later, the mayor and the council speaker waltz in with this seemingly unreachable compromise, and it restores exactly the same things that the mayor threatened. I think it's kind of silly to continue this budget dance. Number one, it's kind of a waste of time. It doesn't actually prioritize the resources that people actually need. But I think moreover, it focuses a huge amount of attention on what is no more than $400 million out of an entire city budget of $70 billion annually. Now, as you point out, not all of the $70 billion is controllable. There are things like pension costs, debt service, and Medicaid that we really don't have any control over. But there still is a $32 billion amount that we do have a large amount of discretion over. And this budget dance, it masks what the real fiscal reality is. It distracts the public's attention away from looking at the overall budget. What are we doing with the other $31.6 billion of the discretionary budget, as opposed to that $400 million budget dance?
Sure, no, I think you're 100% right on that, and you know, that is really indisputable. Now, what is going to draw a lot of controversy, as I'm sure you knew before you went to the breakfast this morning, is that you're calling on what looks like a total of about $15 billion per year, or over a four-year period.
Over a four-year period, yes.
Of additional revenue, and I'm going to just list some of them, and then we'll talk about them. You're talking about $1.2 billion in increased income tax for high-income earners, people making over $1 million a year.
Over $500,000.
Over $500,000. $250 million in commercial real estate tax increase. $410 million by tolling the bridges, not for New Yorkers, but for non-New York residents.
That's right.
$310 million tax on insurance companies, which currently are not taxed by the sort of
well, they're exempt.
They're exempt from the general corporation tax, right? And $200 million for private equity firms that currently don't pay unincorporated business tax on their carried interest. This is a lot of money, and it does have the potential, in some cases, I would suggest, maybe you tell me if I'm wrong, to drive companies out of here. An insurance company in particular. It's not like Con Ed or a utility where it has to be here. They can just pick up and go to Hartford,
I mean,
or pick up and go to Westchester.
So the first point of what I'm calling the budget for the people, or the people's budget, is a re-examination, top to bottom, of all the budget line items, the income as well as the expenses. And we've identified over the next 4 years $15 billion of new additional revenue, that some of which you've just outlined, but also $15 billion of priorities that I think New Yorkers need on the investment side. The issue of insurance companies, since 1970s, the insurance companies have been exempt from general corporation tax. How many small businesses do you know of that are exempt from the general corporation tax? Every business pays that. But why do the insurance companies get this exemption? And I think in the 1970s, there was some concern that the insurance companies would flee to Hartford. Look, it's 2013. This is New York City. New York City cannot be substituted for by any other city. They're going to stay in New York City. And I think that we're asking them to pay the fair amount, the same amount that everybody else pays. But instead, for example, I say, instead of trying to entice the insurance companies to do whatever. I mean, this notion has been around for 40 years. Let's give the tax breaks to the small business owners, to 240,000 businesses across the city who have a tax liability of less than $5,000 a year.
I think the concern is that if you're wrong about that, then the small businesses don't get the benefits. Nobody gets the benefits because the bottom falls out. And the same is true for private equity firms who can go to another place in Connecticut and Greenwich, right?
And I'm proposing that the private equity firms pay their fair share also. And again, everybody, including the mayor, says that small businesses are the economic backbone of New York City. If that's true, let's put the subsidies where it really counts in terms of creating jobs. For too long now, there's been this notion that you can't do this or you can't do that because you don't want to upset the wealthy people, or they're going to leave New York City, or you don't want to upset the big companies because they're going to relocate somewhere else. And I think there was a big New York Times story last December that talked about how, you know, states and cities cannibalizing each other with these so-called incentives, not creating any net new jobs overall in the country, and yet what happens is that what happens is small business actually winds up subsidizing large businesses.
Well, we've got to take a break, but let me just ask you real quick. I mean, put aside the New York Times. In your own experience as the controller of the city, you work with major investors. You probably went to school with some of these people, right?
I sure did.
You know these folks. Are you saying you're 100% certain that a private equity firm, in significant numbers, private equity firms, insurance executives, who, again, are not necessarily tethered here. They can work any place that they've got a phone and a laptop. You're certain that they're going to stay here and not leave if you charge them $500 million a year?
New York is not a commodity. It's a very special place. People want to be New Yorkers. I'm not saying that there will be absolutely no one who will be angry and decide to leave. But the notion that the wealthy or big companies are a closed group and therefore you don't want to have any of them leave is faulty, because you know what? Our population continues to increase. We're drawing people from all around the country and all over the world. And there are companies that are locating to New York City. There are rich people who are coming to New York City wanting to be New Yorkers. Let's not fool ourselves on either front.
Okay, well, folks can see it because it's up on the controller's website.
And don't forget the expenditures that we need this money for. It's about improving education. It's about greater housing and less homelessness and all the things that make a strong city.
We'll touch on that in just a minute, though, but right now we are going to take a short break. Then we'll be back with John Liu. Also tonight, we will talk about patronage in some Bronx courtrooms with a panel of student journalists. And in our political rundown, we'll ask Herson Barrero and Curtis Sliwa if they think Anthony Weiner can launch a political comeback. Stay with us.